Hello, this is R Rats with Team 45 League, analyzing the game between Sykester and Bazmaniac. This was played in round 6 of Team 53. It's a pretty entertaining game, so let's have a look. Okay, we've seen this position a million times in Grandmaster games, and I'm happy to say this game took on a slightly different look. White normally plays e5, and we get c5, and we see a discussion of 15-25 moves to theory, and instead White plays a lesser known move. And the thing I like about this is because it's something Black should be prepared for. It should be something he should know, but it gets him out of the main line that he's used to playing. And Black, like I say, Black should equalize here, and I don't know the theory. So if I was playing Black here, I just have to wing it. And I can do that, which I'll explain in a moment how I would do it. But I'm not playing Black here, and I'm not going to get Black in this position. But you might have Black in this position. So you need to do your homework and watch this video and see what happens. Okay, so like I say, the main difference is that the Black pawn is not on c5. So I really don't know what book is. What's Black going to do? Well, let's look at candidate moves. Okay, one thing I always stress, if you're out of theory, is if anything, a developing move is usually good. All right, so let's consider some developing moves. Well, we know that at some point in a French, Black plays c5, so that's a candidate move. Okay, now what other candidate moves are there? There is knight f6, right? That's a candidate move. That develops a piece. There's another idea possible in this position, and I've seen a lot of French defense players play it, is b6. Now what does b6 do? Well, the purpose of b6 is that Black wants to trade off his French bishop. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, I'm just saying it's a known plan, and I've known strong players that will do this. And face it, if we trade that off, the White bishop on c1, it's got a few problem guys that are in its way. So Black is putting pawns on White squares, so Black can go into a knight versus bishop ending if it gets to that with some comfort that he's not losing. Okay, so the b6 idea of trading the French bishop is something that needs to be looked at. I've actually got a game somewhere in my past where somebody tried it on me, and when I get my website expanded, I will be bringing games back with these offshoot ideas to help you and explain the strategies better with illustrative games from my past. Okay, but we're not there yet. Eventually. Okay, so let's take a look at what Black does. Oh wait, gotta get the main line. Okay, he takes. Now I'm not saying that's a bad move. I'm not at all. But before we do, let's just exhaust a couple things. What White's going to play on d takes e is queen g4. So with that in mind, I'm wondering, what about knight f6? I said that was a candidate move. That developed the knight. Okay? So it prevents queen g4. So what happens if e5? Well, can we come down here with the knight? That's a pretty good square to have the knight, but is it safe? That's a good question. I don't know. White may have some counterplay here. He could give up the pawn on c3 and go about his business with queen g4, which he does in the game. Like I say, I don't know what theory says on this, so theory's going to give you an example, and you can look at it and make your own evaluation if you agree or disagree. But it's a good knight to have there on e4, so unless theory says it's bad for a lot of reasons, then its first look looks okay to me. White can't really play f3 here because this check could be embarrassing. What's White going to do? He's got to get a check. You don't want to really go to e2, do you? Just asking for it. Ouch. You know, look at that poor king. Even if Black has to, well, where's Black going to put his knight? It's a good question, huh? Where's he going to put it? Well, interesting. So, I don't know. Maybe White can survive this. You'll have to look it up. I'm sure if there's enough books on this, you'll find it somewhere. Another candidate move, I suppose, in light of what happened, is to play queen f6. The point being, I'm not saying it's good, but the point being, if queen g, it stops the usefulness of queen g4, and but I don't know, e5, and where's the queen going to go? It's g6. It may eventually, well, it's got some pressure on g2 and c2, and white can't easily. If he plays bishop d3, g2 falls. If he plays queen f3 preparing, bishop d3, c2 could fall. And, I don't know, getting white to play moves like g3 just in order to play bishop g3, I don't know. Black's got time to counterattack the white center. So there's plenty here, and whether it's good or bad, it's been played before. There'll be some theory on it. All I can do is explain the ideas. What I would do if I played queen f6 in this position and white played g3, my first candidate move would be f6, and we'll go back to the game. But the problem with taking the pawn is that it didn't develop a piece. That's the only problem with it. Now, if you look at the position, black's a pawn ahead, but neither side have anything developed, so the pawn is really inconsequential at the moment. And black is threatening to hang on to it with f5. Well, just burn a move so we can do that. That's a bad move to play. Well, there, f5. Now white can seize this diagonal, but I'm just showing you. Then, well, white has recourses here. He'll start undermining the black center with f3 and try to expose it, but that's a whole new ball game. Okay, so queen g4. So now black needs to react. Now, if black does nothing, white will take that g pawn. That's probably a little more valuable than taking the e pawn. But black can probably survive this. He's probably okay. Let's just continue, for the sake of argument. Let's continue our development. Let's go ahead and play. Let's play knight d7. Okay. Now, if we give up the pawn, we're going to play queen f6. That develops another piece, and it gets. It offers black an exchange. Now, if white does make this exchange, it's developing a black piece at the same time. This is something I stress. If you can make developing moves that develop, or make exchanges that develop your pieces. Now, look at this. It's white's move, but black has two pieces out, and white has none. And for the moment, black has secured the pawn on e4. White can't maintain it. So it's really hard to say that white has any strong winning chances here, simply because he has no development. He's going to have to show a plan of action. What is his plan? He's going to have to gang tackle e4. How is he going to do that? You need a knight attacking it and a bishop. Can we get the knight to d2 conveniently? If we put it on g3, we can't get our bishop to g2. So maybe we need a knight and a rook on it. I don't know. Let's see. g3. Play some fantasy chess here. Analyze things out. Whoa, look, black's got another defender on it. Okay. See, it's not that easy of a pawn to go after. So how are we going to get that knight to d2? The path through f3 is blocked. And if we go to e2, it's still not finding its way there. It looks like black is fine here. He could give up the pawn and try what I suggested. So what does black do? He plays knight f6. Now the problem with this is that it takes away from the possibility of putting the queen on f6. It does hold on to the pawn on e4, but I don't know, this move looks just fine. And if white takes the other pawn, then we just play knight f6, and we got a tempo on the queen. And if the queen comes to f3, that stops the b6 idea for this moment. But black is still free here. He can play c5, I'm sure. c5, why not? Okay, what's white going to do? Triple his pawns? Black's in no hurry to take that pawn back. He'll just play queen a5. Okay, so let's look at that. Queen a5. What are you going to do? Hold on to your pawns? Fine, go ahead. The idea is at some point you want to try to get a bishop check in here. Well, we can take the pawn now if we want, but we don't want to yet. Maybe we do. White still doesn't have his kingside development completed, and one problem with bishop e3 is it hangs c3. So I think black probably had better here than knight to f6 immediately. Okay, so now it resembles a lot of the formations where the white pawn is on e5 and this black pawn is on c5, because this is a poison pawn with some slight differences in it. Okay, and black still has that pawn on e4, but his pawns on the king side are split up, and in the other variation his queen got developed and exchanged, and he had little to fear. And again, these ideas are thematic. It's easy to see why a black player would just go into this because he's familiar. These are things you do, but sometimes you don't always use the same plan in a similar position because there are some fundamental differences in the position. And the what's the fundamental difference in this case? Can you solve it? Let's pause the video if you can't, and give you a chance to think about it. Okay, you've resumed the video. What do you think the fundamental difference between this and a French winnower poison pawn is? What's the fundamental difference? I'll show it to you. It's this guy right here. That pawn is never there in a fundamental French winnower poison pawn. It's on d5. It's on d5, and there's a white pawn on e5. So the price that white has paid for playing a3 is that he has given up his e4 pawn. And that pawn holds up, as I've been showing. That pawn holds up on that square. And I think black would have been better served to go into this position with a queen exchange, because it develops his queen and gets another piece developed, okay? And it gets the queens off the board. Or, if anything, it makes white waste time avoiding queen trade. Let's just go back and look at that again, and I'll illustrate. What I was saying was knight d7. Now we don't care if he takes on e4 because that was the free pawn. We're just going to play knight f6 and be fine. So here I was explaining that if queen takes, black just develops his piece. So let's assume white doesn't want to take. Where's he going to go? He could go to g3, and he's got some pressure here, I suppose. But black has resources. For the moment, white is not threatening the pawn on e4. He is threatening the pawn on c7. He is threatening to play bishop g5, but that's something black can deal with. So let's go ahead and be aggressive. Let's threaten a pawn of our own. Okay, what's black going to do, or white going to do? He could try bishop g5, right? But then the queen just goes to g6, and I think black is fine here. White's still not poised to take advantage of this pawn on e4. It's secure. The only thing maybe white could consider at some time, and it's risky, is to gambit it. But even then, black can just let it sit there. If you take back with check, and here you could play h6 and force off a queen trade. That's probably something white doesn't want. Okay, queen trade. Look, boom, and then white doesn't want to take on c5 and expose all of his double pawns, and black could just develop a piece to guard the pawn on e4. Okay, fine. Now if we take it, now look, there's a threat. There's a threat. These lines aren't forced, obviously, but it just kind of shows you some of the possibilities, and they're all based on the fundamental rule of developing your pieces. And we strayed away from the idea of chasing the queen out, and we took on this different style because of that fundamental difference, the pawn on e4. So anytime a position is similar, old tricks don't always work, and we've seen that before. So that's a whole other quiz. Okay, so he gave up that pawn, and he goes through this maneuver of chasing the queen out. Now it's true black has two pieces developed, but there's still a lot of chess to be played. The whole queen side here is undeveloped. Okay, so now let's think about one other thing: king safety. Since neither side is really developed, where they're going to put their kings. The only place black can castle is queen side. But castling by hand may not be a bad alternative. If the king's in trouble, he can just run to f8 here, right? He should be able to survive that, I would think. Okay, so let's see what happens. Okay, so b6. it's the right idea, but it just didn't follow through right. I was playing knight d7 in the other positions and trying for c5, and this kind of tries for c5, but I think it's better to have a knight able to recapture on c5 rather than a pawn. Okay, so now white makes a pin, and if black's not careful, he could lose the piece, but he puts another defender on it. Now we're back in the theme of what I said. So black still looks okay here, and white's slow playing it. So I don't know, the logical move seems to be bishop b7 now. Just hunker down and secure that pawn. But I guess white didn't want to be in a pin, or black didn't want to be in a pin, so I'm not sure about h6. It gives up a pawn, but it gets rid of the pin. So what's wrong with making a developing move, okay? Like I say, in light of all other things, making a developing move is fine. Okay, what's white going to do? Well, he's got to develop these guys, or the bishop on f1. The only way to do that is either move the pawn or the knight. So where's the knight going to go? Chase the rook? Why not? Okay, now the rook has to come back. Now look at this. We come in here with a new idea. Okay, so maybe that's why black felt he had to go into this line. Okay, so there is some method to the madness. So maybe black can't play bishop b7 here. He obviously felt he had to play h6. Let's look at the time he spent. Well, he spent 2 minutes on it. So, and I've clearly spent that much time just talking about bishop b7. So knight f4, is it a threat? Well, it's a threat if it chases the rook away. But then again, what else can black do to defend it? Suppose he's got 3 defenders on the knight, but the problem is the knight becomes a third attacker and chases the rook out. So b6 may be a mistake. Even though it was the right intention, as I said, I like knight d7 better immediately. That's before the bishop got to g5. So b6, bishop g5. So now it's a problem. White's threatening to play knight to e2, knight to f4, and knight to h5. So if black does knight d7 and bishop g5, is white still threatening to do the same thing? That's a good question. It's black's move. He has time to prepare for it. What if he goes for c5, as I was saying? Okay, knight e2. Now, one difference here is the black queen has some activity, and that breaks the pin. And that's critical here. That breaks the pin. So what about queen a5? It stops knight g3, right? Because of knight g3, queen takes c3 check. So knight d7 was a better move than b6. Black needed to break the pin. Okay. So he gives up a pawn. Oops. Gives up a pawn. We're still not in the rain line. There I am. Okay. He ends up giving up the pawn here to break that possibility. Okay. Now it's only a pawn. Now it might be more risky for black to try to castle by hand here. Well, for the moment he can't. The bishop's on h6, stops the king from moving. But black still needs to complete his development. He's got his bishop on c8 and his queen on d8 and the rook on a8. So black could castle queenside in 3 moves. Bishop b7, queen e7, and castles. But maybe white can just go back and do what he was trying to do. Let's have a look. So rook g4 and chase the queen back. Now the pin is gone, but now the knight is tied down guarding the rook. So how's white going to progress here? Okay, I'm not sure about e5. it has visions of wanting to do some tactics on the queen. But in principle, it just seems to be opening up the position. See, white's not. There's no open lines here for white to bring his rooks into play. You know, the b6 pawns blocks the b file, so black's king will be reasonably safe if he castles long. What else can white do? He's got a potential, but that's for a long way, to run this h pawn, but that's a long ways off, and that pawn gets passed in a lot of French winnowers, and black has resources against that, which we won't go into. But this is a slightly different French winnower. But e5 doesn't really help the development. That's the thing I don't like about it. And to me, that could be the mistake here. How much time does he spend on it? Okay, I'm sorry, groaning. Okay, he had 42 seconds, so he gained 37 seconds on his clock. That means subtract that out from 45 seconds. He spent 8 seconds on that move. 8 seconds. Impulsive chess. Let's play a developing move. Like I say, in spite of everything else, play a developing move. See what happens. What's white going to do? He doesn't have a pawn or a pin on that anymore. It's guarded. It is guarding the rook, but there's another knight willing to take its place if it's exchanged. So what does white do? Okay, knight g3. Okay, queen e7. All right. What's he going to do now? Bishop g6. Fine. If anything, I'll go all the way back. Now what's white going to do? What's white going to do? What does black have to fear in this position? e4 is secure. He's not losing that. Does white doesn't want to castle queenside. He's going to drop a pawn with check. So let's just castle for both sides. Now, if black followed the logic of development first, he would have completed his development at the price of a pawn. He's down a pawn, but look how safe he is. White is not poised to take advantage of any pin because there is no pin. Black gave up a pawn for it. Black has some compensation in the position because he has 2 open files in which to conduct an attack against the white king. Black has to be okay here. White's got a lot to prove to win this game. If white's going to win, he's going to win because he's a pawn ahead, but he's not going to win with that pawn ahead until the end game. And black's got sufficient activity. And white has some weaknesses here, mind you. You know, these pawns are all over here are all weak, and that pawn on e4 for black is very strong. So I've said many times before in these forums, slow down, guys. What's your hurry? You can't play 8-second chess. You can't, and expect to do well in this league. So unless I'm missing something, what was wrong with my plan? Just develop. What's white do? He has no threat on the board. You know, the h6 move was kind of clever in a way. It broke the pin, and the idea is that you're going to catch up in development and try to utilize that those open files down the line. Okay, so 8 seconds for that move. I'm just whoever knows this guy's on his team, you need to tell him to slow down. Hopefully somebody sends him a message to come watch this video. Basmaniac, you're a good player, but you need to slow down. You're costing your team precious points. Okay, so now white is okay to castle queenside because black wasn't on that pawn. Now black is, and he forces white to spend a move. But still, chances are black should be okay. He's still close to getting his development completed. All he has to do is play bishop b7 and castle. Or if he's so inclined, what's wrong with bishop a6? Okay, the point of bishop a6 is something I pointed out earlier. You want to trade the French bishop off. What's white going to do? If he doesn't want to trade the bishop, it's going to have to get fianchettoed, right? You got to go through this laborious process. G3, guard the knight because it's pinned, move the bishop. That's 3 moves. Black gets 3 moves too. He can do a few things. Let's have a look. What can he do? Okay, G3. Well, first thing, let's castle. Second, let's put the rook here to guard the knight, right? Or do you want to put it on D2? Maybe D2's a little better. Okay. Now it's black's move. Wow. I'm going to break open the center. Hey, I got bishop G2 in, finally. But now it's look at what black's doing. He's getting active here. He's going to give up a center pawn, but there's some attacking chances here for black. And look at the white queen. It's buried. It's buried on H3. So these may not be the best moves for black in the last few moves, but they're moves, and certainly chances are this position wouldn't happen. But the alternative is we just trade off the bishop. Okay. Okay. So I was going through a process to keep the bishop on. Okay. Knight G3. Well, let's just get it off. Okay. That was what we're going to do. Trade it. Now we'll castle. Okay. E4 is still covered, right? It sure is. White can attack it again, I suppose, but black has 2 defenders on it for the moment, so he's okay. Could maybe get away with C5 again. All kinds of possibilities here. It's a whole new ball game. So H6 was clever, but it has to be followed up with finishing your development, okay, and then trying to get some play. Okay, so now the rook goes back to G6. Why not develop? It seemed to be okay on G4. Why did it need to come back? What was he afraid of? What's attacking it? Nothing's attacking it. So I don't understand rook G6. How much time did he spend on that move? Well, he spent some time on it, close to 4 minutes. So unless I'm missing something, there was nothing wrong with it. Anyway, Queen H4. Yeah, pin's back. The pin is back. And now we go back there again and chase the queen. And I guess black's happy with the draw, so he comes back. But you're just repeating the mistake. You know, you've got these visions of doing a discovery here, and black finally, or white finally says, "Go ahead, do your worst." He allows the discovery. So let's see. Hopefully, white takes his time here because there's a lot of interesting possibilities. Let's see. How much time did he spend on that move? Yeah, he spent five minutes on that move, finding a good move. He's not afraid of a discovery. And the reason he doesn't have to be afraid of a discovery is because he took his time and determined he shouldn't be. And one of the reasons he shouldn't be afraid is because black has not bothered completing his development. So now black goes there. How much time did he spend on that move? Well, he spent 10 minutes. So I guess he didn't find anything in the discoveries. There was nothing there. So 10 minutes and only to find out that there's no useful discovery. Yeah, well, think about it. Where's the knight go? C5? Where's it going to go next? Well, it's got a check, which might lead to something. Check the king and maybe grab on C3 if the king backs up, or put the bishop on D7, supporting the knight on A4. I don't know. What am I missing? Okay. Is he afraid of this move? I don't know. Maybe he should be. Let's see. Knight check. Let's get it over with. Now we got a queen loose, and we've got a knight loose. How are we going to handle that? We can take the knight, and we still have to deal with the other knight. So the bishop D7 idea doesn't work. Queen D7 walks into a discovery. Yeah, I guess maybe black discovered he didn't have anything. So plan B came about, knight G4. But did he have to play knight G4? What's wrong with developing? Knight G4 just unprotects the pawn on E4, right? Or E5. Oh, wait a minute. It supports E5, but unprotects the pawn on E4. What's wrong with bishop b7? With bishop a6 is out of the way. What's wrong with it? What am I missing? Is he afraid of knight f5 again? Yeah, maybe. Oh, that looks like it might be something worthy, because knight g7 check is coming. And why did knight f5 become a possibility? Why? Because black gave white that square when he pushed e5 on move 13. So, anyway, he decided he had to play there. Now he's, if knight f5, well, it looks like knight f5 is coming anyway. He didn't. Oh, he's on h6. I forgot about that. Okay, I can't see one movers. Okay, now that seemed to be, to me, the losing move. Just got him in all kinds of hot water. Now that you've chased the bishop out of h6, f8 should be kept clear for the king to run to. We could have castled queenside. I've shown that already. But we still have this development problem. And these guys, how many videos have I made? I'll keep saying it every time I see it. How many videos have you seen where one side or both sides have that queen rook and queen bishop sitting on their original squares late in the game? Here it is, move 19, and neither one is moved. Black, in effect, I'll say it again, is giving white odds of a rook and a bishop, and it's that simple. Until he gets those pieces out, they're watching. They're spectators. Meanwhile, you could say white doesn't have his development completed on the king side, but what knight f8 does is it allows a check. Get the bishop developed with check. Black's pieces are coming out with tempo, or white's pieces are coming out with tempo. I showed how black's bishop could have gotten developed with an idea to trade the bishops off, the white squared bishops, but he didn't do it. Okay, so moving on. Knight f8. How much time did he spend? Well, his clock only went down 40 seconds, so he spent about 80 seconds. When you have 29 minutes, 30 minutes on your clock, why do you need to rush a move like that? What's he planning? To remaneuver it to e6 and f4? I don't know what he's trying to do. Unless he explains it, I don't know. But the knight on f8 just gets in black's way from the rest of the game. That's a good square to park the king on if you have to. Okay? And he's going to need to move that king in a minute. And white doesn't take the check yet. I don't know why not. It might not have been a bad move. Oh, no, there's a reason for it. You'll see in a second. Okay. And I guess maybe the plan of knight g4 was to trade off white's bad bishop. That bishop was on the color of his pawns. It wasn't a good piece for the ending. So, spent all that time moving that knight around to go take a bishop off. Well, you should have traded the white squared bishops, not this one. Okay, so now white has theoretically the better bishop if there's a bishop ending. But that's all in theory. Both sides have a lot of pawns on black squares, but white's still a pawn ahead, too. Oh, here's the idea, tactic. And that's, yeah. So he's got these visions of doing something, but apparently white's prepared or just blundered into it. I couldn't say unless white comes in and talks. But it's easy to see a move like this if you're looking at elementary tactics, but there's an old saying, it's called the boomerang, or where you set up a combination and then something happens to mess you all up. And that's exactly what happens here. Okay, and there it is. Now this is where black runs into trouble. He just didn't see the good idea of this check. Now the first case, black's probably should play c6, but unfortunately he's losing another pawn here. White will take it, and then black's trick is gone. White is now 2 pawns ahead. The third pawn is threatened, but that's how bad things have gotten for black, just in a couple of quick moves. But c6 should be played. What we need to play here is king f8, but we can't. We can't because the knight's there. Now the king's got to get into danger. So what else? What else can black do to break the check? Well, he's got to be careful. Bishop d7. There's some danger here. Okay. e5. Queen is a little overworked. If you take with the queen, not only does white have the luxury of taking a pawn with a pawn, you can take it with the queen. Either one has a tempo because queen takes e5 is check. And that's probably the better because after d takes e, black has a check of his own. But and if the knight takes, there's some nuisance checks here, and black's pretty much forced to trade queens, and then white just gobbles another pawn, I guess. Let's see. Queen takes. You want to take with the knight? I don't know. Probably not. Probably take with the king. Now, if you take on e4, g2 falls. So what if we just wait a move? Play rook g1. Well, black can play here, right? But then we just go eat this pawn and drive the knight away. So this game got grim on black in a hurry. Okay, so instead what black does is he just walks into discoveries. And this is a big ouch, Check, and now got to move the king. Oh no, I'm sorry. Don't have to move the king yet. Black gets his desired exchange win, but this attack is too deadly. And here, unfortunately, white missed a very nice finish. Pause the video. White to play and do the best he can. Okay, you come back. Probably the move you're looking at is what he played, bishop a6 check, and trust me, that wins too. But I said he missed a very nice finish. Knight f5. What does black do? Okay, you've got to get the queen out of danger, right? So how many squares are there that are free? Well, let's look at this one. Okay. Well, the problem, the fly in the ointment, is now you do the check, and then you get this very nice little checkmate. So really, white doesn't have, or black doesn't have anything here. So knight f5 was a winner. And now he plays it, but it's not as convincing because, here, we'll see why in a second, because now black has this move at his disposal. He didn't have it in the other position. Why? Because the white bishop was still on b5. But trust me, white is still winning this. It's crystal clear. I'm just saying white missed a quicker finish, that's all. And that happens. If you see a win that you're convinced it wins, go for it. When you get better at chess, you'll look a little longer and a little deeper. White certainly had time on the clock. He could have. Now he'll know if he sees this video. But now new threats come around, and black's got this exchange ahead, but what good is it doing him? It's not doing me any good at all. Black's finally solved his development problem of his dark squared bishop by winning an exchange with it, right? But he never solved the problem of his rook. The rook on a8 is a spectator. It's not going anywhere, period. White has, in effect, a piece ahead in this position. Plus, he's got a threat. The threat is still back rank mates. So black deals with that. Covers the back rank, and then this is a very nice move, knight e7. Two nice knight moves. I forgot to pause the video, but it has some useful motives to it. The first is you're threatening this check and deflecting the queen away from protection of d8. So, for instance, if it were white's move here, he would play knight e6 check, and it's kind of hard to burn a move here because so much of the black position can't move. Let's just take a pawn. Now, like I say, the threat is check, and now the only legal move out is to play here. Then white can do it the pretty way and give up the queen, and there's mate. So, aside from the threat of knight c6 check, there's also a threat of knight takes g6, and so how's white going to handle that? Okay, rook g7. Well, don't we just do the same things, right? I think we do. So I guess the only way to cover the back rank is just to put the rook back on g8. But well, maybe not. You still do. You don't do it. You got d8 covered. but white has to, even if it's not better, maybe I'm missing something. White has to be crushing in this position. You know, this rook is a lost piece. You know, I talked about earlier, you're giving odds of a rook when you don't develop it. Well, now it's guaranteed he's giving an odds of a rook because it's not getting developed. Well, black could try for c5 at some point, but I think black did the right thing by resigning. But he still has 23 minutes on his clock, and a lot of those 23 minutes could have been used to avoid this mess. So anyway, I think there was a lot here. Hopefully you've all gained something from this. Chances are that I've missed 2 or 3 good moves, but that happens. I'm just here to I'll find mistakes and offer suggestions, and for those that played the game or want to study these openings or these positions, you can sit down, set up the board, and keep looking at this game and look at different ideas and see what you come up with. And of course, the express interest is that you now do this with your games, because I maintain your best study method is to study your games and find out what went wrong and try and solve everything. And so again, if you're playing it here in the league and want to submit a game, just submit it. I'll do a video for it. That's why I'm here. And work on it yourself and correct your mistakes, find out why you're making mistakes, and correct those, and you're going to do better. Because I'm sure Basmaniac can play a very, very good game. His rating is high enough to indicate that, so you just didn't have it this game. But there was definitely some chances, and there always is. It takes a mistake to win a game, because if there wasn't a mistake, well, nobody would win, right? Okay, thanks so much for your time. I look forward to making more videos in the very near future. Take care. Bye.